Hello from wherever you're watching this podcast from. My name is Ayub Mwangi. I am a communication professional and consultant. And in this series of podcasts, we address how to mainstream communication as a function of management. Now, today I want us to address the issue of crisis communication and specifically how to handle a crisis. And we are going to take the example of the Kericho-based tea factory called James Finley. Now, early this year, James Finley woke up to a report in the media in which it was alleged that the company employees were actually soliciting for sex before they could employ any of the employees. Now, the report touched mainly on women. Now, what you realize is that this particular crisis had nothing to do with the management of James Finley. James Finley was just going about their work as they do on a day-to-day basis. But behind the scenes, the BBC investigations team called BBCI were filing a report in which it was alleged that one of the people affiliated to James Finley was actually soliciting for sex before they could give employment to some of those women. This was quite a damning report. Of course, it must have shaken the company because they could not understand where did it come from? When did we get here? And one of the things that James Finley said is that it was deeply disturbed by the reports. They could not actually agree or they could not believe that this is what was happening to them. James Finley, in fact, said that the report had brought embarrassment to the company. In a nutshell, what we can say is that James Finley was admitting somehow this report has gotten us flat-footed and we are deeply disturbed, we are embarrassed by the report. So what happened then is that one of the sustainable agriculture organizations that gives accreditation or certification to companies that are engaged in good agricultural practices actually suspended the membership of James Finley from that organization. The Rainforest Alliance conducted some survey in the organization. They conducted an audit to establish whether what was said in that particular report by the BBCI was true. And they established, yes, that there are some management lapses, there are some weaknesses and gaps here and there that James Finley needed to address before it could be given back its certification. Now, on the part of James Finley, they said, yeah, the crisis has happened, but it is not us. It is actually that person or that company that we have hired to hire employees, or we have subcontracted this company to hire employees on our behalf. So in any case, these employees are not our employees. They belong to the company of that particular person called Chebochok. But we are deeply sorry, we are deeply embarrassed, we are deeply disturbed by those reports. How then can we say that James Finley did or behaved, or how did they handle this particular crisis? Number one is that they expressed deep regret with the happenings of that report. They actually said they were disturbed and embarrassed that that was happening before their very eyes. Number two, James Finley decided that it was going to terminate the contract of the subcontracted company, allied to James Chebuchok, and that all those employees that were working for that particular company would be brought to the fold of James Finley. Now, the other thing is that James Finley said that it was going to engage in corrective action so that such action or such violations do not happen either in the short term or in the long term. They are going to put in mechanisms that would ensure that whatever had happened with James Chebochok would not happen either in the short term or in the long term. Ultimately, James Finley also terminated the contract of John Chebochok, who was accused. He was even recorded. He was recorded soliciting, not even soliciting, even attempting to have sex with those undercover investigators. So can we say then that James Finley handled the crisis well? Yes, we can say that James Finley did well because of taking the corrective action, terminating the contracts of the accused person, and even committing to engage in action that would ensure that such action or such violations do not happen in the future. We can say that James Finley demonstrated that it cared for its stakeholders' welfare. It cared for the welfare of those employees, even though they were not its direct employees. But when James Finley agreed now to bring the employees to its fold, we can say that James Finley demonstrated that it cared for the welfare of these employees. Further, James Finley addressed the embarrassment by taking corrective action. In a way, we can say that James Finley also demonstrated a sense of remorsefulness. How did this happen when we were here? What happened? We are sorry. In a way, without saying sorry, but at the same time being sorry, James Finley demonstrated that it had taken, it was remorseful for what had happened and affected the organization. As you realize, this corrective action was important because James Finley had lost so much in terms of reputation. In fact, markets in the United Kingdom were saying that they did not want to be associated with that particular company because of what was happening in the organization. But because of the corrective action, James Finley was able to bounce back, and it is still in business. So, what do you think? Personally, I think James Finley did well. So, what do you think? You can leave us a comment about what you think about the crisis response that was deployed by James Finley, and whether you think that it was good in restoring the image and reputation of that particular organization. Thank you, and continue watching, and thank you so much for subscribing to this podcast.